Let's see what you sound like tonight. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound of me. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, oh, but now I'm found. Oh, I was blind, oh, but now I see. Amazing, amazing grace. Has to be the most sung song in the church, don't you think, over the last 150 years? The song not only sung in churches, but people outside of church. People of all traditions have been attracted to this great anthem of liberation. I heard a story. It was years ago. It was during an abortive revolution in China. Remember Tiananmen Square and the students standing in front of the tanks? There was a person there that day that said he heard some of the students singing. They were singing two songs. They were singing Bob Dylan's "The Answer is Blowing in the Wind." And some of them were singing Amazing Grace. But as powerful and as sacred an anthem as Amazing Grace is, it was way back in junior high when we had a new youth director. Showed up at our church, a new youth pastor with an idea whose time had come. Basically what we were looking for in junior high, and that was something that would deeply disturb our parents. And he succeeded by teaching us how to sing Amazing Grace to a slightly different tune. So if you were bouncing around in a youth group back in the day, maybe even you sang Amazing Grace like this. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. Oh yeah. That saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. We were singing Amazing Grace to the tune of a song called The House. We were singing Amazing Grace to the tune of a song about a brothel in New Orleans. Did you know that? Disturbed my parents? You bet it did. But you don't give young people an idea and have them just stop right there. We said, no, wait a minute. You started this. There's some other tunes we'd like to try. There was a little ditty on TV at the time that worked just fine. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound, saved a wretch like me. Oh yeah. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Blind, but now I see. Oh, it's the real thing. What the world needs today. What I really want to say. Yes. Oh, it's Amazing Grace. Soon the question was being asked, does the word tacky not mean anything anymore? And evidently it did not. Somebody figured out you could sing Amazing Grace to the number one country tune way back in the day. An old Hank Williams song that Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. There you go. Saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. I'm so lonesome I could cry. friend Chris Hughes and I started some years ago, started to travel around the country with this medley. We started to collect songs. Every place we went, it turned out there was somebody with another song to add to our collection. And the more that people came up to us and said, oh, you've got to try this different tune, we realized we had started a movement. But it was a movement that was on its way downhill. The more we listened to songs, the more we wondered, I wonder how far downhill it will go before it hits bottom. Well, I think it hit bottom the day somebody came up and suggested this one. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound, saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, blind, but now I see. It was grace that taught my heart to fear, grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed, the hour I first believed. Skipper, skipper, make them stop. But they would not stop. My own children, my own children. It was New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve, and we had gathered at a little restaurant down where we live in Southwest Florida. A little restaurant's out on the beach, and it's a beautiful place to go for New Year's Eve because there's a big beach and a dance floor, and there's a band, and there's stars, and it's about 70 degrees. In fact, next year, if you're not doing anything on December 31st, you need to come down. And it is our family tradition that when it comes to midnight, we want to be out in the middle of that dance floor. We want to be there because they've got a big, large fishing net full of balloons that'll drop down. And so there I was with my 3 daughters and my wife, and we were there waiting for the countdown. 10, 9, 8, 3, 2, 1. That's when we realized that we were surrounded by people in no condition to sing, let alone even remember the words to the traditional Auld Lang Syne. But the band struck it up, and there we went, you know. So it sounded like the Minions doing a choir, you know. And then I'm listening, and my daughter Amanda is singing, I once was lost, but now I'm found. Blind, but now I see. So we joined her, and we started singing, was blind, but now I see. My friend was blind, but now I see. And the people around us, they knew the words to this song. So they started singing with us. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now we have 100 people around us. We sound like a church choir, singing through many dangers, toils, and snares. Come on. Through many dangers, toil, and snares, we have already come. It was grace that brought us. Was grace that brought us safe this far, and grace will lead us home. The owner of the restaurant invited my family back next year to lead the choir on the beach. And next year, Bobby, I'm going to bring offering plates. But I grew up, as many of you did, sitting around campfires, holding a guitar close to my heart. And we'd sit around and we'd sing songs into the night. And one of the songs, the early songs that I learned on the guitar and learned to love, was a song by a band called the Eagles. You remember the Eagles? Yes, yes, wonderful, wonderful. In fact, they're still out there. I saw them on tour, and they were wonderful. They look a little like buzzards now, but you know. I looked in the mirror the other day and thought, well, it does happen, doesn't it? But they had a sweet song called A Peaceful, Easy Feeling. And the first time I heard somebody sing Amazing Grace to the tune of A Peaceful, Easy Feeling, I thought it sounded as good as the original. Although for one twisted moment, I pictured the Eagles sitting around a campfire one night, trying to sing trying to sing Amazing Grace to the tune of A Peaceful, Easy Feeling. Now this is going to bother some of you when you get home. I love the way your sparkling earrings lay against your skin, so golden brown. It gets worse. I want to sleep with you in the desert tonight with a million stars all around. Now is that tacky or what? But I'll tell you what, you turn it around, it gets righteous. You turn it around, it's so sweet, especially when a whole group of people join in and sing it together, like you're just about to do. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound, saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Add this little part now. And I get a peaceful, easy feeling. I know it won't let me down, 'cause I'm already standing. I'm on higher ground. I'm on higher ground. Well, I thought we'd start off with that tonight. Bobby thought it'd be a good idea. I can blame it on him. Please don't come up after and tell me more tunes for that collection. We're just about full up. I've been honored to be a guest at Wesley Chapel and at Plateau Church today. Churches are interesting places. I got here this morning about an hour before the service. And this is true in just about every church I've ever been to. There are some people that come about 45 minutes before the service. And as near as I can figure out, the reason they come so early is so that they can get that choice back row seat. They've been sitting there since 1944 and they're not going to move. I once suggested that a congregation, instead of burying people, they just bronze them. And just leave them where they used to sit in church. You know? Wouldn't that be nice? You wouldn't have to miss them as much. You know, just a little plaque beside them on the pew, don't talk to her, she's dead. Sat here from 1912 to 1974. But I have been studying people that sit in the back of church. There's a certain group of people in every congregation that tend toward the back. We can talk about them. They're not here. They're not here this afternoon. You know who I'm talking about, though, don't you? They don't come to these kind of things. They're back there. People that have been sitting back in the back row so long, they look like Mount Rushmore back there. Look like they're carved in stone. And I love them. Some of the most interesting people in the church toward the back. Generally older folks, people my age back there. But then every once in a while I'll see a young person. I'll see a young person way in the back. And I'll remember when I was a young person growing up in church. We not only sat on the back row, we had a balcony. We called ourselves the vultures. As we perched up there in the balcony, watching church from our perch, Watching church from a distance. We sat up there and watched church from a distance, and sometimes we'd say to each other, you know, someday we probably ought to swoop down and join the flock. But the statistics said that we would not. It's been pretty much the same over the past 50 years as they've studied this. You're a young person growing up in the Methodist church or in any of the mainline churches. By the time you get to be about driver's license age, 15 or 16, 4 out of 5 young people do not swoop down and join the flock. 4 out of 5, 80%, just fly away. Look around. The church is an aging phenomenon. And some would say that the church as we know it will not be here in a few years because you and I won't be here in the next few years. So when I come and visit a church, I look to see if there's a 14-year-old sitting there in the back. The 14-year-old me is somewhere back there. In fact, in every audience and congregation, the 14-year-old me is sitting back there. And when I see me back there, I have to sing me a song. Sing this just for the 14-year-old me sitting back there on the back pew. Sunday school is over, it's time to go to church. Like a homing pigeon to my favorite perch, but I'm just sitting in the back row, far as I can be, with the preacher and the choir, with the introit son to see. I got my Sunday morning sitting back row of the sanctuary blue. From this place I'm sitting, got a perfect view of everything that's going on in every single view, and I can see who isn't listening, see who falls asleep. And all the time I'm talking to the girl that's next to me. Got the Sunday morning sitting on the back row of the sanctuary blue. But I just daydream through the scriptures, the announcements and the songs, thinking about the dance next week and who to ask along. Then halfway through the morning prayer, I remember Friday night, oh, the date that I had with that preacher's kid, really out of sight. I got the Sunday morning sitting back row of the sanctuary blue. Cause then the preacher gets excited. She starts to talk real loud. She's saying something about somebody coming back on a cloud. Whatever she's a-saying can't apply to me. I haven't missed a single week since 1963, when people think going to church is just a waste of time. Time that couldn't be better spent on a country club front night. Church is not a waste of time, at least it's not for me. I even wrote the song during the doxology. I got the Sunday morning sitting back row of the sanctuary. Sunday morning sitting back row of the sanctuary. Sunday morning sitting back row of the sanctuary blue. I got the sanctuary blue. I got the Sunday morning sitting on the back row of the sanctuary blue. Yes, I do. Love a little church. Love a little church. Wesley Chapel this morning. That's such a sweet place up there. And this congregation, I visited this congregation many times back in the day. But every once in a while, somebody calls up from one of those big churches. And I end up in a service. I'm telling you what, you can have those big churches, but every once in a while I have to be a guest. And I was a guest in a church that literally had thousands of people coming on Sunday morning. And they had 3 services, one right after another. So if you're working on Sunday morning up in front, you just got to put your head down and try to survive. I've been traveling and singing in churches for almost 50 years. And over that time, in almost 8,000 different worship experiences, I've seen just about everything. I mean, church is something to behold. And over that time, I I would have thought I'd seen just about everything, and then every year I see something I never expected to see. Well, I saw it at this church that Sunday morning. They had an early service. I think it was about 8 o'clock. I think that service was mostly for the golfers. There are a lot of people checking their watches, looking like they're getting ready for a tee time. You know what I mean? They were on their way somewhere. So they decided to come to church early and get it over with. Then at 9:30, they had another service they called temporary worship. You know about temporary worship? It's all the rage out there. It's a different way of doing things. They call it temporary worship. I never did understand why they called it temporary, but I've been studying temporary worship and decided the reason they call it temporary is because these people are on their way somewhere. And they haven't gotten there yet, is what I figured. They're kind of like on the frontier of the church, which is a good thing to have people out on the frontier. So that's a good name for this group, temporary worship. And then at 11 o'clock, they had a worship service for grown-ups. People my age, and I like that because that's how I grew up, and I kind of like that. But it's that 9:30 service that I want to tell you about. That was the first time I'd ever been on stage with a heavy metal worship band. They had a fog machine. Waves of smoke rolling down off the stage. They had laser lights shooting up through the smoke. And the volume of that band was loud enough to loosen your dentures. Not just temporary dentures. I mean, your real teeth would come out. But it wasn't the band that I wanted to talk about this afternoon. It was the people. I had never, ever, in all of my experience, run into a tougher bunch of people than that crowd that morning. I mean, those people just sat there, stared at me. They were hard. These people were mean. And if you've been with me, or if you were with me today, you can kind of tell, I'm kind of conversational. It's just us. We're just talking, you know. And I need something back from people for what I do to work. And these people gave me nothing. So like I say, I put my head down and toughed it out. I survived, barely. And then I got on to the 11 o'clock worship, and we had a wonderful, wonderful time. And then it was time for me to leave. The pastor of the church, a longtime friend of mine, he stayed to help me with my equipment and get it loaded in the van. And while we were loading the equipment to the van, I kind of wanted to say something about that 9:30 service. But I didn't want to be rude. I mean, I was a guest. These people had been paying me to be nice. And I almost made it. We were standing out next to the van, and I just finally had to say, I said, Pastor, that 9:30 service. I've been a guest in churches for almost 50 years now, and in all of my years, I've never run into a tougher group of people. I said to him, those people sat there like they were in prison or something. And he said, well, many of them had been. Not that long ago. And that's when he told me the rest of the story. Some months earlier, that church had partnered with a halfway house that worked with the families of men and women who were coming out of penitentiary life back into their home community. They thought that would be a good group of people to invite to their 9:30 service and let them know that this was a place they could call home. And these people came and found a place, a safe place. and a place they did call home. And because they liked it, they invited their friends. And their friends liked it and invited their friends, until all over that city everyone knows that the 9:30 service at that church, that's where you go. That's where you go to come home. Where you go for reconciliation. Where you go for recovery. This afternoon, as we sit here, over 2.5 million of our brothers and sisters are behind concrete blocks, chain link fence, barbed wire, and prison bars. We put more people in prison in the United States than any country ever has. And Jesus talked about that. Remember when he said, I was thirsty? Where were you? I was hungry, he said. I was in prison. You remember when he told that story? What the people said back to him? They said, we didn't know. We didn't know it was you. And do you remember what he said? He said, anytime someone is thirsty, anytime someone is hungry, and wherever anyone is in prison, that's me. That's me. I don't know why I stole the money. Seemed like a good idea at the time. The place I worked for didn't need it. At least that's how I worked it out in my mind. I grabbed the bag beneath the counter. Across the railroad tracks and fled. They should have called the sheriff. They just called you instead. Oh, the gift of mercy is nothing I deserve. But if I ever get down, it'll be mercy, not justice, that's served. Sometimes I wonder how you stand me with all my treachery down. I've broken windows just for meanness, broken hearts for an easy way out. I pawned your locket to pay the phone bill. I swore to you I'd get it back. That was a year ago, December. You still ain't said nothing about that. Oh, the gift of mercy is nothing I deserve. If I ever get down, it'll be mercy, not justice, that's served. Love is like a candle blazing in the wind. It don't give in. You've been burning for so long. Don't think I haven't noticed how hard it's been. So if you're thinking about leaving, I wouldn't blame you in the least. There's no rule you have to follow, no guiding star up in the east. But if you still believe in miracles, I'm gonna turn my life around. Don't give up on me, darling. Lost sinners still can be found. Oh, the gift of mercy is nothing we deserve. But when we finally get to heaven, it'll be mercy, not justice, that's served. And when you finally get to heaven, it'll be mercy, not justice, that's served. We talked with the young people this morning. We had a children's sermon time. Some churches have that little children's moment. It's when I'm invited to do the children's moment I can understand why Jesus once said, I think it's in Matthew, that little children made him suffer. Or something like that. It's in there. Something about little children and suffering. Jesus said that. You can check it out. I wasn't paying real close attention in seminary that day. I may have it wrong. But little children haven't changed much in 2,000 years. So we were talking about one of the problems little children have in church, and that's that this is one of those shh places. One of those places where you have to be quiet. It's one of those places, one of the first places where you learn dignity and discipline. And then that's not one of your favorite things. You know? I talked with them this morning about shh. And when you're little, that they tell you if you don't be quiet, they're going to take you outside. So there you are, and you're like 3 years old, and the first thing you know about church is, when you come in here, you have to leave part of yourself outside. The noisy part, which when you're 3 is pretty much all you got. But, yes. Well, we got to talk about that. Even when I was 3, I liked church. One of the first things I liked was one of the things they have in this church, and that's a lot of color in the window. Even if you don't know what's going on and can't understand anything, you can look at pictures. And there was music. Music in church. You weren't watching it up on a screen or on TV. Everybody around you was singing. I loved that. So I liked church, and I kept coming to church. Then I got to be about 13. In junior high, that's when I found out there was some more of me. They wanted me to leave outside before I came in there. It was some of my jokes. Actually, I remember now, it was all of my jokes. But I still loved church, so I kept coming. And then when I was in high school, I found out they wanted me to leave out some of my music. Actually, it was all of my music, too. But I kept coming to church, and I've been coming to church all my life. Been coming to church, and sometimes now I'm old, and I sit out there where we sit. I sit out there in church sometimes. I just sit there and I think about it. I think, you know, over all these years, less and less of me has been coming to church. Some of the most important parts have been left out. I think that's happened to a lot of people. Have you ever looked at the people sitting next to you in church on Sunday morning and thought to yourself, you know, some of these people are not all here. Think about it. Think about it. You may be thinking that this afternoon. Yes. So I decided some time ago that if church is going to be anything, it ought to be a place where you bring all of who you are. It ought to be a place where you can bring your laughter and your music and all of that, all of who you have been and who you will be, and make yourself at home. And so I've always loved a joyful and a courageous church. But there are some people in every church, and I'll bet you there are some in this church, and in the church any of you go, there's some people in church, you do anything unusual, they get upset. Something happens that they weren't expecting, they get all nervous. Again, we can talk about them, they're not here. But you know who I'm talking about. They sit right over there. But let me tell you something. There are some people in a church, and I'm one of them, that can't wait for something to go wrong. I don't think it really is church until something goes wrong, because something unusual and something unexpected happens. Doesn't that make you feel a little bit more at home? And when you feel at home, don't you feel a whole lot more like a family? Now when I was a lad, I took me a trip every summer down to Mississippi to visit my granny in her antebellum world. We'd run barefooted all day long, we'd climb up trees, we'd sing songs. One summer I caught myself a squirrel. Now I shoved it down in an old shoebox, slapped a couple of holes in the top. Sunday came, I snuck him into church. And I'm sitting way back in the very back pew, showing this thing to my good buddy Hugh. This squirrel got loose, went totally berserk. Now what happened next is hard to tell. Some thought it was heaven, others thought it was hell, but that something was among us was plain to see. And as the choir sang, I surrender all, this squirrel ran up Harv Newman's coveralls. Harv, he leaps to his feet, he shouted, "Some got a hold on me." Lady, the squirrel went berserk. The first of the righteous church, sleepy little town of Pascagoula. It was a fight for survival, broke out in a revival. They just jump in the pews and shout, "Hallelujah." Now I found this song goes a whole lot better if we have a little audience participation. And I had a little accident about last spring where I lost a good part of my voice, and a lot of it has not come back. So this afternoon I need your help with this song. And the part I need help is that shouting hallelujah. I just can't do that shouting anymore. That's going to be your part, okay? Now, you need to wait until we get to your part. Okay, don't just go to shouting hallelujah. There's people here that will stare at you. Okay, so here it comes. Get ready for it. They just jump in the pews and shout, "Hallelujah!" That's good, that's good. That's real good. Better than I thought it was going to be. But it could be even better than that. They tell me it helps when you shout hallelujah to hold your hands up in the air and wave them just a little bit. Yeah. Like the church down the valley that some of you have been sneaking off to. You've seen them on TV and you said, "Oh, I'd like to try that just one time." Well, here's your chance. Are you ready? Loosen up now. They just jump shout. I wish you could see yourself. Doesn't that feel good? Yeah. Kind of makes me wish those back windows were clear, though. Because I think it'd be cool, somebody going by on Scrots about then and go, Martha, isn't that the Methodist church in there? I just looked in the windows. They got people with their hands in the air. I told you that pastor was crazy. Now Harvey hit the aisles dancing and screaming. Some thought he had religion, others thought he had a demon. Harv thought he had a weed eater loose in his Fruit of the Loom. He got down on his knees to plead and beg. The squirrel ran out of his breeches leg and observed over to the other side of the room. He got all the way down to the amen pew, where sat Sister Bertha, much better than you, who'd been watching all this commotion with sadistic glee. When you should have seen the look in her eyes. Squirrel jumped her garters, crossed her thighs. She jumps up on the pew, she's waving her hand, said, Lord, have mercy on me. And that squirrel did laps inside her dress. She began to moan. Then she confessed some sins would have made sailors blush with shame. And she spoke of gossip, church dissension, but she really got everybody's attention. When she talked about her love life, she started naming names. The name of the squirrel Windsor, look out, First Self-Righteous Church, sleepy little town of Pascagoula. It was a fight for survival. Broke out in a revival. They just jump in the pews and shout, Hallelujah. You know that 7 deacons and the pastor got saved. $25,000 was raised. 50 volunteered to go as missionaries to Arkansas on the spot, even without an invitation. 500 rededications, and we all had to be baptized whether we needed it or not. Now you've heard the Bible stories, I guess. God parted the waters for Moses to cross over the miracles he has wrought in this old world. But the one I'll remember till my dying day was how he put that church back on the narrow way with just one half crazy Mississippi squirrel. Did a squirrel win the circle in the First Self-Righteous Church, sleepy little town of Pascagoula. It was a fight for survival. Broke out in a revival. They just jumped in the pews and shouted, Hallelujah. Let's try it one more time. Jump in the pews and shout, Hallelujah. Amen. I was on tour in Texas last summer. Go out there at least once a year and do a series of concerts. And that tour wound up on a Saturday night with a big show where I was opening the show for another artist, a well-known author. You may not know him, but I have known him for some time, a best-selling author and humorist. His name is Philip Gully. Quite well known around the country, and is also known as one of the funniest storytellers out there. So I was up against some serious competition. Philip and I had become friends at some events that we had done together, and so that's why he invited me to come and do this show with him. One of the ways we have become close friends is on Facebook. Now, some of you probably do a little Facebook, and others of you are as far away from it as you can get. Facebook can make some people feel uncomfortable. They're usually the people that sit toward the back. But Philip has thousands and thousands of people that follow him on Facebook. Even if you don't know how it works, it's just like having 10,000 friends. And every year, on Facebook, on his page on Facebook, Philip sponsors a joke-telling contest. Open to all of his friends, and all you have to do is free. You just go on his page, and you can put a joke on that page. And after about 2 or 3 weeks collecting all of these jokes, Philip reads them all, and he chooses one to win the contest, and you get one of his books autographed or something like that. He's the judge of who wins the contest. And thousands of people send in a lot of jokes. Now, the jokes have to be spiritual of some kind, religious. Philip is a Quaker minister and a deeply spiritual man, even though he's quite funny. So the joke has to be about Jesus or God or the Bible, and some kind of religious joke. You know the kind of joke I'm talking about, religious humor, church humor. Well, here's the problem with that kind of humor and those kind of jokes. Just about every one of them have been told over and over and over again. And you know how boring it is to hear a joke you've heard too many times. It's just not that funny. And so thousands of people send in thousands of old, tired jokes. So I decided I would enter his contest 2 years ago. And I won. I won, but not because my joke was so good. It was because I finally sent in a joke that no one had ever heard before. Because I made it up.
Well, let's hear.
Oh, I thought you never asked. There you go. Okay, see what you think. You may not think so after you hear this one. So the winner of the 2012 Philip Gully National Joke Contest. You know the conversation Jesus has with Peter, where he asks Peter, "Who do you think that I am?" Well, Peter says to him, "Well, I don't know. Who do you think you are?" And Jesus says, "Well, I'm thinking I might be God." "God," Peter said. "What gives you that idea?" Jesus said, "Well, it's mostly when I pray. I just kind of feel like I'm talking to myself." When you pray, don't you sometimes feel like you're just talking to yourself? Prayer can be one of those hard things. Especially when you're praying from one of those dark places. We often do. We have to. From the dark night of the soul. From the valleys of the shadows of death. Sometimes when we pray, remember how we used to say, the prayers don't get any higher than the ceiling. Sometimes you do feel like you're just talking to yourself. Jesus' friends struggled with prayer. And one day they asked him to teach them how to pray. But I think they misunderstood him. Because some of them thought they heard him say, "Memorize this." For the prayer that he taught them, they just repeated. And have done so for over 2,000 years, just saying the same words over and over again. How would you feel if you were a teacher and you came back and found that your students hadn't gotten any further than just saying what they learned some years before and repeating the same thing over and over and over again? I'm not too sure what Jesus would say if he heard us just saying what we memorized. In fact, you know, I think if Jesus listened to some of us pray, he might say, you know what? Your problem is when you pray, you talk too much. I know that's true for me. So this afternoon, for just a moment, instead of talking, I want you to listen. And if you want, you can just close your eyes and hear the other side of the conversation. Still, you're still my child. Be still and know that I am God. Wait on my power. I can fight the battles that you find so hard and rest for a while and feel my spirit make you. Still, be still, my child, and know that I'll be God for you. I've been watching you running round in circles, acting like your world, all of its ways. Never seeking the truth or seeing a miracle. Never taking the time to hear me say that still, you're still my child. Be still and know that I am God. Wait on my word. I can answer the questions that you find so hard and rest for a while and feel my spirit make you new. Still, be still, my child, and know that I'll be God for you. Be still, my child, you're still my child. Today has been a special privilege to be a guest of this congregation and Wesley Chapel. These congregations have prepared and And some of you have been invited this afternoon because of the work they have done. But mostly it's because of a friendship with Pastor Bobby and I have kind of grown up together. Well, I'm much younger than he is, but we've been pals here for the past few years, particularly as Bobby has worked with the young people of this church and brought them over to confirmation events as they make their journey of faith together. So we've come to know each other and share the journey of following Jesus Christ and coming to understand what that means, particularly in some of the most difficult places in life. So a real joy to be with you today. We're going to pause for a word from my sponsor. But don't go away, because you will be right back after these messages. Here's Bobby.
They truly understand a 13-year-old me. That's why we've become such great friends. Just a few quick announcements. Don't forget that next week we have our Missional Network service, and we'd love for all of you to come and be part of it at Palm Tree UMC at 6 p.m. And we're going to take a free will offering in a moment. I need my 4 scouts that I asked to come help come up, and we're going to take the money will go toward this concert and help cover the speed. Thank you. Oh, you ready? That's all right. We'll use 5.
We'll do a bunch of jobs.
We'll do a lot of jobs. David can't count. But this is our scout troop that I have a privilege of working with every Sunday, on the first and third Sunday. These are some fine young men, and we got a great scoutmaster, and we lead them through a lot of things. These guys are going to come through in a moment, and they're going to take a free little offering. Ed also has some things out in the lobby when the concert's over. If you'd like to go out and purchase that from him, please do so. But if you've never had a chance to go as a teenager or as a confirmand to the retreats, it's awesome. Especially as an adult, to be able to take those young people to the church. And I appreciate everybody being here. Appreciate everybody being here this morning. Thank you for your love and support of my brother in Christ. We're going to pray over the offering, and then I'll let these young men go and play. Let's pray. Gracious God, we thank you for this wonderful time to be here. We thank you for this beautiful day to protect us. Lord, you wake us up. Breathe life into us again. And Lord, as we do take time to be still in the place to hear from you, to walk along our journey. And Lord, we pray now as we freely give to your cause and to your ministry that's been given through us today. And we thank you for the opportunity and the ability to be able to pray these things in your holy and precious name. Amen. 2 down the middle and 2 on the outside. Maybe you know. But
While they're doing this, I'm going to watch. Bobby, it goes better if you keep an eye on it.
I know.
I've seen some people you say, you can do better.
I love it. So you're a little short this week.
Some people should get to be able to take some out
Yeah.
rather than put some.
Probably do.
No, I thought I'd come out and look at you for a little bit here. You can look at me. Because really, that's what I get to do in a concert, is I get to watch you while you're watching me. And I think what I get to do is more interesting than what you do. Because some of you have put on quite a show. Because I watch faces. I watch people's faces. You can sit down. Those scouts aren't going to come back. I watch people's faces because sometimes, just by watching your faces, even though you don't say anything, I can kind of tell sometimes what people are thinking. What people are thinking when I'm up here. Like at the beginning of the concert. Now, I asked Bobby not to introduce me. But sometimes at the beginning of a concert, somebody gets up and introduces me. And they try to make it sound like I'm somebody. And I look out there and I see a look on people's faces, a look that says, and I can tell what they're thinking. It's a look that says, I've never heard of this guy before in my life. And you haven't, have you? Most of you have never heard of me before. Well, that's kind of sad, but you know, I've never heard of you either. And some of you are a big deal around here because you told me that you are. But you come down to where I live, we just stare at you. But then I get into the concert, about 2 or 3 songs. And there's another look. In every audience, every congregation, about 2 or 3 songs in, there's somebody sitting there with a look on their face that says, this is not what I was expecting. Now, I've had to get used to that look over the years, because that's the way my mother looked at me. I don't know what you're laughing about. Your mother looked at you that way. Because every one of us has managed to be some kind of surprise to somebody. But then sometimes I'll look out there and there'll be a look on somebody's face that says they're waiting for something. They're waiting for something and I'm not it. I mean, I'm up there trying as best I can. I do some quiet songs. I do some fast songs. I try to do something funny. I do something serious. And I'm looking out there and they're just sitting there going, you're not even close. So I don't know. Come down to the end of the afternoon, I don't know. Maybe there's something you're waiting for. And I haven't gotten to it yet. Well, there's a lot more where this came from. But we're just about done. If you did hear something this afternoon that you want to hear again, or if there's something that you'd like to hear more of what I do, they set up a little table out there, blocking the door. It's not real high. You just have to climb up over the top to get out. But they wanted you to be able to see the little table. The little table has some of the music and some of the stories that I've been doing this afternoon, so you can stop by and take some music home. Now, if you've never been with me before, people come up and they say, well, I've never even heard of you. What's the best you've got? Well, I've got 2 CDs called The Best You Got. Makes it simple. The best I've got. The most requested songs from concerts over the past few years. The best Volume 1 and Volume 2. So there you go. That would be a simple way to start. But for some of you, that's not going to be enough. I can just tell. You got that look on your face. That's not going to be enough. So there is a 4 CD set out there. It has 4 CDs in it. A 4 CD set recorded in concert, like you heard this afternoon, recorded live, so it has the stories as well as the songs. And it has some of the jokes that I told this afternoon and this morning. Some of the jokes that I told this afternoon and this morning were really funnier than you thought they were. I'm just saying. Maybe some of you need to get the 4 CD set and see how they were supposed to go. How many Samaritans does it take to change a light bulb? 1, if it's good. Now that's funny. So, the 4 CD set is called The Grateful Ed. Grateful Ed. See, that's funny. That's funny because there was a band called The Grateful Dead that you don't know anything about. She's got some tie-dyed shirts in her. You may want to ask her about that. The Grateful Ed live, and so that 4 CD
he said is out there. There's a children's album. Because I really do love children. They don't make me suffer. But sometimes I make them suffer. See, because that's in the Bible too. Jesus said, suffer the little children. If that's not making suffer, I don't know what it is. So, a children's album for children between, say, 5 and 12 children. Children's songs. I designed this for families that take long trips together and end up not speaking to each other. Because it's hard to find music that children like and adults like. So it's an intergenerational family album music. I recorded it with my children, and they kind of picked the songs, their favorite song. So it's an album called Daddy's Home. Daddy's Home. So if you want a children's album for little children, Daddy's Home. I have some older adults. I work a lot with older adults that come up and ask me, well, have you done anything for older adults? You've done for children. Why don't you do an album for older? And I have not. Done anything for older adults. My children think I should do it, though, and they tell me maybe you could call it Daddy's in a Home. Which is a pretty good joke. If you're not as old as I am. Not so funny. Not so funny. Because I'm getting close. Getting close. So, collection of albums out there. Some of the other albums that are available. And if nothing else, there's a yellow sheet out there that has some 20 of the albums that I've done over the years. You just take that yellow sheet and we can get together on the interweb.
And do you remember seeing that Thursday visual? It was Twinkle Twinkle. I made the visual. You were on the same first.
Oh, yeah? Wow. I can't even remember yesterday. And he was remember 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
It's all been said and done.
Well, I'm getting right there to that too. I moved to Florida a couple of years ago and found when I got to Florida that the new bishop of the Methodist Church in Florida is from North Carolina. And if y'all know Ken Carter, I watched that boy grow up. So it's real hard to take him seriously as a bishop, but they think he's a big deal down there. I just know him as Ken, you know. So I moved to Florida, and Ken, who's already down there, the bishop of the whole state, calls me up and he says, Ed, now that you're down here, we want you to work with the older adults in Florida. Well, they have a lot of older adults in Florida. Florida is the largest assisted living facility in the world. So, I go off to Leesburg, Florida, where we have there's a big conference center down there, where we're going to have the annual older adult retreat, and I'm going to be the leader. Okay? So I walk in a room with about 300 older adults, all sitting around tables and just staring at the floor. This retreat was going nowhere. And the leadership of the retreat, they come over to me, they said, now Mr. Kilbourne, that's what we need you for. We need something to get this group going. Do you have something like some kind of activity, some kind of icebreaker to break these people loose? Well, I did not. Because that's not what I do. I just tell a few stories and sing a few songs. So I had to think of something. But here's what I came up with. I invited all the people sitting around the table in that room to get out their medications. I said, come on folks, I know you're carrying. Get out your medications. I want you to get your medications out. I want you to put them on the table in front of you. Well, you heard the rustle of people digging in pockets and purses. And it took them a little while. But eventually out in front of just about every person there was an amber vial. And then some people had 2. Then some people had 4. And then some people had a whole chess set sitting in front of them, but just about everybody in the room had something. I said, now here's what we're going to do. Figure out who the oldest person is at each table. And I want you to go around the table and I want you to share how you get through your day. Hours later, these people were still going strong. I mean, we heard stories. Some stories we didn't really want to hear. People had pulled up shirts and unbuttoned blouses. We saw the scars. And the leadership of the event thought that I was a genius. So they invited me back. They invited me back the next year to do the same event, but it was with a different group of people. And I walked into that room, and they were just sitting there. Sitting around tables, staring at the floor. The leadership of the event come to me again. They say, Mr. Kilbourne, you did it last year. Can you do it again? Well, I didn't want to do the same thing again. So I thought about it. And here's what I came up with the second year. I said, okay, let's figure out who the youngest person is at each table. And I want you to go around the table and I want you to share your plans for your funeral. This one did not go so well. I had a bunch of people just staring at me. Staring at me hard with a look on their face that said, you got to be kidding. But I was not. A funeral is a celebration, or it should be. And you don't give a party for your friends without giving it some thought. And I've given it some thought. I have a file. Somebody's going to have to dig it up one day. It's a file. It's on my desk. It's marked celebration. And every once in a while I'll pull that file out and I'll add a poem or the name of a person, or a hymn, or a song. Because I'm planning for that party. Some of you may be there. Now, I'm going to have to miss it by about a week. I mean, I know that's sad, but that's the way these things work out. But if you're there, I've left instructions that somebody has to sing this song. When it's all been said and done, there is just one thing that matters. Did I do my best to live for truth? Did I live my life for you? When it's all been said and done, all my riches will be nothing. Only what I've done for love's reward will stand the test of time. Lord, your mercy is so great that you look beyond our weakness, finding purest gold in miry clay, making sinners into saints. I will always sing your praise, here on earth and ever after. For you've shown us heaven's our true home. When it's all been said and done, you're my is gone. When it's all been said and done, there is just one thing that matters. Did I do my best to live for truth? Did I live my life for you? Lord, I live my life for you.